there's a lot of emphasis that goes into getting a master's degree or getting a PhD for non-research machine learning roles. And I think the industry is getting to see that you really don't need like a PhD to work on machine learning products, or you don't need a master's to work on machine learning products. So that's one thing that I think I kind of disagree with, and then I think everything is starting to normalize around that. So you have
Hello, fellow data science enthusiasts. Welcome to the Data Queries podcast, where we talk about everything in the field of data science, from artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. And on today's episode, we have with me the young bright mind Habeeb Shopeju, who is a software engineer and machine learning engineer at Thomson Reuters Lab here in the United Kingdom. And we're going to be learning about his amazing experience and journey from a Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta in Nigeria to his present and current role here in the United Kingdom. Habeeb, welcome to the show.
It's nice to be here, thanks for having me.
So Habeeb, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at Thomson Reuters Labs?
My background, I studied electrical electronics engineering at the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, that's located in Nigeria. The program ran for 5 years. So while running that program, I was also self-teaching myself most of computer science concepts. I think we had a couple of computer science courses as well as part of that particular program. Then I taught myself to write code in Python. I taught myself most of machine learning fundamentals, and then started working on projects as well. For my role at Thomson Reuters, I'm currently working as a machine learning engineer at the Thomson Reuters Labs. Thomson Reuters Labs is the applied research division of the company, and the objective is to see how machine learning and artificial intelligence can be integrated into existing company products or to build new company products. So, yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting, Habeeb. For some of our guests on the show, we come also from, I'll say, different backgrounds in terms of, let me say, academic and career path to the present role as data scientists, machine learning, and AI engineers. So, I would like to know, what triggered that interest in machine learning? Because, as you rightly said, your background was in electronics engineering. So, and you taught yourself to program, which is very interesting, as most of, I'll say, software engineers. But what was that interest back in school that got you into software engineering and now machine learning?
So I think it's mainly influence from friends and family. My brother is a systems engineer, and I have a cousin who is a software engineer as well. And then when I also resumed at the university, there's a very active developer community at school. It used to be the Google Developer Group at that point, but now it's the Google Developer Students Club. So in my college, there are kind of a large number of people who are also part of that community. So it was easy to get influenced positively by what they were doing, and then they were also getting to build cool projects at that point. So I thought it would be nice to take a look at it. Before then, I was already having interests gradually, but then seeing the amount of work they were doing kind of put me to take a bit seriously, and that's how I got started with software engineering. For how I got interested in machine learning, since I picked up Python initially, and then machine learning happens to be one of the commonly used applications of the language. I think it was kind of natural to gravitate in that direction. So I basically started taking courses. I remember very well taking Andrew's course on Coursera. I think a particular one in machine learning specialization. Found that to be a bit difficult to pick up initially because it was maths intensive. So I struggled a bit, but then used other resources as well. So gradually, because I came from learning or being in the process of learning software engineering, I had more interest in building software, and then also putting machine learning integrations into that software. So it kind of felt like a good combination of both skill sets, and I basically was pushing to learn both at the same time. I think because I was in school, it was easy for me to keep up with both, because I did not have lots of external pressure to make money fast, since it was basically my first year in university. So I think I had about 2 to 3 years to pursue both interests and then work on projects that were basically interesting to me.
Yeah, so sounds really interesting. I mean, because like I think it all happens to us when you're trying to learn. I mean, because you get to that point where sometimes it's like you're not understanding, as you said with the case of the course in Coursera, and which was heavy and math intensive. But what I also find very interesting with you, I mean, and your experience, is the fact that, I mean, most people take time to go into machine learning engineer, but within the short time of space in which you'll be able to do that with schoolwork, I mean, like, I don't know how you manage that, but were there any, like, I would say, like, tips or ways that you were able to, because at the same time, you were also working. So how are you managing your time, managing your, I would say, time between school, learning, and work? I mean, that's too much. I mean, even though you say you never had pressure, but how do you achieve that?
So I think at some point I took school out of my focus. I don't advise that. But I did that at one point. The weird thing is, I still ended up with good grades because I finished with a second class upper, which is basically just one step away from a first class. So I have friends. The weird thing is, I have friends who are able to do everything and then still come up with the first class. So that's I really don't advise that, because there are definitely ways to get everything working out together. For how I got that to work, because as I said earlier, because I took school out of the picture for a large part, I had a lot more time to focus on myself learning, and then I was freelancing at that point as a writer. So I had lots of technical writing gigs to work on. So I think that kind of also helped, because it helped broaden the type of exposed to new was possible. I think that kind of covers how I did all of them. For how I got to manage with school, because I started school quite seriously in the first place. Before I started to take my feet off the pedal, I had lots of good relationships with people who were also taking school very seriously as I did in the first instance. So I got lots of assistance with being associated with them, because they kind of understood most of the coursework much faster. So by attending tutorials with them, getting to do assignments with them kind of helped reduce the pressure on the school side. So I think it was kind of while I wouldn't say it was fun, but I think it was not as stressful as it would possibly look like to someone on the outside, because I had people I could associate with and benefit from they being serious as well. So I think that kind of covers how I was able to manage everything. But then I'd also like to say that it wasn't easy as well, because I spent like lots of nights watching courses and then with electricity challenges. So there are some nights that I would probably have to dedicate some parts of the night to taking courses, because days were often for lectures. So I think that's how it worked for me then.
Well, but I mean, not to give you your flowers. I mean, you still were able to still pull it off despite the challenges, and also, as you said, your friends were still there in for you. But I mean, a lot of, I would say, of the flowers and merit goes back to you putting in the effort. And you also brought up that point about technical writing, which was an experience you also have. I mean, and I would like to, let me say, you should elaborate on that. What was like technical writing? Why did it help you, or why do you think it better prepared you to see more opportunities? Because I also write technically, and I also commission at one point in time to write for register. And I feel like sometimes when you write technically, it also helps you, let me say, get some, I would say, knowledge and exposure. But in your part, and as a machine learning engineer, what were the things that you were doing there as you were writing that, let me say, better informed you towards this part, and also prepared you technically too? Maybe research, learning new, I don't know, just think.
I think looking back, I really can't say I planned everything to go as it went. But then since I started out, before I even picked up languages, I used to be quite good at writing in the first place. I used to do poetry, So I kind of dropped poetry completely when I picked up technical skills. Then I started writing articles across different fields, from networking to web development, things like that. I don't remember writing any actually technical ML article, but I think
Okay.
I did write articles that kind of explain the machine learning concepts and things in that line. But I think looking back now, one of the things that experience did was it kind of took the fear of writing out of the picture, because I knew I had done this like for a long time. So I did not consider writing to be of a challenge to me in any way. If I wanted to write articles on the things I was learning, it was very easy for me to do that because I'd put in the work initially. So I really don't know how it is for other people who do not feel very confident. But I think that the lack of fear for certain things actually goes a long way, because now you know you can actually do this thing. Then for some reason, I think it also improved my research skills, because when you are writing, you need to do lots of research and you use search engines a lot. So while I really can't pinpoint the actual things that it helped with, I think the entire experience of getting involved and engrossed in that activity helped with my engineering career in the long run.
Yeah, anyway, at the end of the show, I'm sure you would like to share some of the resources you used to write some of the blogs and other things, so that some of our listeners will benefit from that. But moving on to our next, interest is about, what were some of the early projects that you did in the early days, right, as a machine learning engineer that, prepared you for the role in which you are? Because, where you are currently is one of the leading, I'll say, media firms in finance. Thomson Reuters is like the next level of, financial information and all that. So what were some of the early projects that you feel like, were like, I'll say, prepared you in the better position in which you are today?
So I think it's kind of hard to answer that question, because I've done like different projects, and it's kind of hard to say specifically what could have helped. But then there's one thing that I often like to tell people, which is just get to work on projects that interest you. So I mean, there are lots of problems around. It doesn't even have to be a serious problem. It could be something that's just funny, something that's, and can work on that. And then you'd while doing that, you get to learn the technicalities behind solving such problems. You get to have hands-on experience using the technologies you would use. Then you can also share your work. When you share your work, you get other people to see it. Some of the projects I worked on, 2 months into learning to code, I remember working on like a chat bot that was supposed to help answer sports questions. For example, you wanted to know what the scores of a live match was. You could do that through like a Facebook bot. And I was pulling from Daily Mail at that point, and it had no ML in it. I was basically just linking direct words to the action. So it was basically just providing direct keywords to perform certain tasks. I also remember working on web crawling projects. For example, pulling data from e-commerce stores. I did work on lots of freelance projects that were web crawling projects. So if I were to look at it backwards, I think that bit kind of helped give me a good introduction into how you get data from actual sources, which is a key part to machine learning today, because you can't do anything without data. So getting to work with APIs, or getting to crawl from web pages actually goes a long way. I also got to work on a project for getting news on certain things about the Nigerian educational system. So there was a particular point, there was strike action by the academic staff in Union of Universities. So I built like this simple web app that was pulling information about that particular strike from different platforms, different news. So it was creating all that data on one page, and people could just visit that page and see what was the latest going on. Like, it was fun. Probably does not worth a lot of money, but then it was fun and people liked it. That kind of helped build my web development bits. So I think there are lots of various projects. I also remember working on a Twitter bot. basically it was supposed to find duplicates. So say you make a tweet now, then you want to see if someone else copied that tweet, you could just tag the bot and it would find duplicates of that particular tweet, which is basically similarity checks on the machine learning side. So I think as at that point, those different projects interested me, and I got to work on them. At the moment, I also have similar projects that I'm working on that I'm basically just picking up based on what I'm interested in. So as I said earlier, I really can't pinpoint actual projects, but then I think somehow everything just ties together because it's coming from personal interests, and then everything just gets to make sense.
But even though you can't pinpoint, but there's some beginner projects you feel like sometimes it's good to have, let me say, on your portfolio, on your GitHub, for that, let me say, sometimes being interest with employers when they're trying to, let me say, hire candidates. Are there some key advice in those kind of projects you may have insights on based on your experience and interviews?
Yeah, I think it's basically everything I've said so far. Build, because if I were to say work on this project or work on that project, I would not see if there's any difference between that and then you just googling up what projects should you work on, and then you just go and work on that. Because I think if you were to have an interview now, then you are supposed to answer questions on that project. It would make much more impact if it's a project you were actually interested in the first place. That there's a story behind why you worked on that project. Than if it were to be a project that you just picked up. If you have no project ideas, you can definitely just make some research and at least just work on something. But I think the much more valuable projects are the ones that you actually felt interested in working on, and then they have a story behind them which you can share with others. So I think that's the key part behind whatever project it is you pick. So it's not about like the quantity, it's more like the quality and the story behind it. So.
That's nice to hear from you, because most of the time, I mean, people always like asking which project and all that. I mean, but you already put it, I mean, your interest and the story behind and all that. Not actually, let me say, this particular project or that, but just basically your interest should lead you, and maybe the tools and everything you use now comes from that, not the other way around. And that's nice to reassuring to hear from you. And also about the project you're working on, we spoke about last time our discussion, the hackathon. I mean, how do you manage, let me say, work now and personal projects with hackathons? Like, how do you get time? Is it like things you do on the weekend, during the week? I don't like how does that play in your daily life?
So I think I personally don't have a lot of things doing aside work and personal activities. So the hackathon itself was on a weekend, which kind of explains why I was chanced to do that. But then I personally have like a 2 hour slot in every day where I do personal study. So if I'm to be working on a project, I basically just fix that project into that personal study time slot, and I always do that 2 hour study the first thing every day. It doesn't happen every day because I think it's kind of hard to do the same thing every day. So there are some days that I kind of just split it. But then I've been doing this for like 2 years now, 2 hours every day, and I've learned like lots of things in that period. So when I get the 2 hour slots done, I then focus on other activities such as work, house stuff, hanging out with friends and things like that. It's probably a lot, or it could be small depending on who I'm speaking with. But then I think being consistent with how much time you put into this every day for like a year or two would actually go a long way. So I think that's how I've basically been able to manage it. 2 hours every day, and then everything else kind of just works fine if I sort the first 2 hours.
Okay, very interesting. And some of our listeners who are very curious, I mean, each time we talk about, let me say, machine learning, like what are some of the, in terms of technology and tech stacks, right? What are some of the tech stacks that in your day-to-day role you use, and some that you learned before, maybe like, and you not actually find more value in your current role, but maybe were helpful, let me say, in the foundational knowledge? So,
I think for a machine learning engineering role, having an actual software engineering experience goes a long way. So for me, I think the fact that I've worked with project frameworks like Django, Flask, FastAPI in the past has kind of helped in some way. Although I've not actually gotten to use them on in the job for like my last 2 roles, but I've had a particular role that where I was working on a search project and I worked on the back end and the NLP bits. So it's easy to see how that knowledge of those backend frameworks fits in. And I think knowing those things also helps you get a better picture of how REST APIs work. Oftentimes you'd have to plug your models into those APIs. So I think knowing at least the backend library kind of helps. On the machine learning bits, because the field of machine learning is broad, so there's where you get to work with tabular data. I can work with tabular data, but if anyone was to ask me, I'd say I have zero experience working with it because I do not put in any effort to even like try to understand how those things work, because my main focus in like the last 1 or 2 years has been computer vision and natural language processing. So for the computer vision end, there are libraries like SciPy, NLTK, Hugging Face transformers, and everything in the Hugging Face ecosystem. Like PyTorch, TensorFlow. I personally use PyTorch a lot. Not a lot, but then I use PyTorch lots more than TensorFlow, mainly because PyTorch has like a good relationship with Hugging Face ecosystem. So I think Hugging Face has kind of had this positive ripple effect on every other library that it's kind of adopts as well. So I think those are like the main tools. Then regular machine learning libraries, Pandas, NumPy. Those are kind of very common. I've actually personally not used Matplotlib. I've not used Matplotlib like more than 10 times if I'm actually counting. So Python requests. Python requests is also something you would use a lot when you're pulling data from your data sources.
What about Fast AI?
Fast AI, I've heard of that a lot, but I've personally not used it on any project in the past. So I think those are like the main tools. Then knowing how to use SQL. I've personally not used SQL, like a lot of SQL in projects because it's been mainly actual data engineers or data analysts that have had to learn all of that technology. So I've mainly interfaced with databases using ORMs. So that's like object relational mappers for databases. So you really don't have to write the actual SQL. But there are some times where you need to write the SQL for just to act something together, and then now you need that knowledge. So while I've not gotten to use SQL a lot because I've learned it in the past and understand how most of these databases work, say relational databases, graph databases, and then NoSQL databases. The knowledge always comes in handy every time I need them. So I think those are like the main tools. What else? For the interface, say you are prototyping a tool. I've used Streamlit a lot in the past. I know there's Dash. I think I've had teammates use Dash a lot in the past as well. Basically, Dash and Streamlit make it easy for you to come up with interfaces for your machine learning models and build fast apps. And build apps fast, more like using those tools. So I think those are the main tools that I've used that come easily to me. For computer vision, the main tools I've used for those have been PyTorch as well. There's the TensorFlow object detection library as well. I think I've used that a lot as well. Then there's one from Facebook called Detectron. So I've used Detectron in the past as well. So I think most of these, there's scikit-learn. So I think it's like a large ecosystem of this type of libraries.
Very large. Exactly.
So it basically just depends on what task it is you are working on, what your team uses, what fits in best. So it's often not very difficult to. It's difficult if you're just getting started because you can. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but then by the time you start picking each one up, you don't You don't feel bothered if you don't know a library already because you start gaining confidence in picking up something and just getting to use it if you know the fundamentals well enough. So
so just to summarize that, guys, I mean, it's important, as Habeeb said, like in terms of to get some background in software engineering, how the web functions and all that, because you build some foundational blocks to build ML models and to learn other technological stacks. And Habib, I mean, going to your background still, in the sense you have so much experience within this short time, which is very impressive. So, like, which of these companies, right, or let me say mentors did you meet that actually had a profound interest, or let me say impact in your career, maybe based on the work you did in this company, or this person, a career advice he gave to you that, let me say, changed the trajectory or prepared you, let me say, into the current roles and opportunities in which you are at this present time?
So I really can't say there's actual concrete advice that I can remember, but then I actually think I've been lucky enough to have worked with lots of really brilliant people, even from all of my internships and then my actual job roles. So every company I've worked at, I've had lots of great relationships from there. And then they have mainly been either my direct managers or the software engineering leads of those teams. So I really can't say there's any actual advice that I've gotten career-wise, mainly because I think for some weird reason I've been self-driving myself. So most times they often don't have to tell me a lot of things because I'm just moving in my own direction, provided it's in line with what the company is doing and then the projects we are working on. But then, like, I've been involved in say like five or more companies up to this point, and then I think it's
cool
been
at the same time.
I
mean, let's mention that.
yeah.
So, in terms of your experience and exposure you've had with these different companies that you're talking about, and I also mentioned the fact that we were doing all these roles in the past with school, we give you credit for that. So, like, what are some of the things, let me say, from your own experience that you disagree with the industry or with other practitioners, right? Or some things you fear overrated in machine learning from your experience?
Some things I think are overrated.
Or you disagree, I mean.
I disagree with. So personally, I think there's a lot of emphasis that goes into getting a master's degree or getting a PhD for non-research machine learning roles. And I think the industry is getting to see that you really don't need like a PhD to work on machine learning products, or you don't need a master's to work on machine learning products. So that's one thing that I think I kind of disagree with, and then I think everything is starting to normalize around that. So you have for actual research roles, without doubt, having a PhD kind of goes along with having a master's goes along with, because through those programs you get exposure to how research works and things of that sort. There are actually people who do not do masters or PhD that are involved in research as well. But then for research roles, there's no doubt that you need research experience to do things like that. But for actual product roles, where you're basically working on bringing machine learning capabilities into the products, emphasis on having those research skills is often not supposed to be at the top level. More like it should be more like having the actual engineering or analytics skills to get the job done. So that's one. Then I think there has been lots of in the software engineering space, lots of emphasis goes into creating frameworks or patterns. Say some would be like use microservices, some would be like use monoliths, and then lots of effort goes into these things. They've definitely been helpful. So if it fits in, but then some of these frameworks are kind of built to work for large companies, so where the companies have lots of things or lots of products or services they're offering. But if you are a startup and then you basically try to bring in all of that knowledge down to your own scope, where you're supposed to be moving things fast and then getting to the risk if your product would actually work or reach customer market fit, then it's definitely not going to work for you. So I think those are just some of the things that I think I kind of disagree with.
Okay, cool, nice. And you brought up something just like at the back of my mind, interesting. The disparity in terms of, large companies and small companies, where you talk about, let me see the companies big. And say that you've had both experience working for big and small cap companies and all that. So in these two roles, are there any difference or similarities or some things you felt like for an early career it was better in this role or in this company because of the size and all that? Like, what do you think is good, let me say, for people that are trying to get into machine learning, high small companies, big companies, or from your experience, which company actually, let me say, is a training ground for you and prepared you better?
I think if you're getting into machine learning, then you don't have an option. You basically take the options that come to you. So if you are getting started with anything, basically, I do not think you'd have the luxury of picking, except you somehow gain lots of skill, and then you have lots of things at your table. So I think someone getting it will probably not even find that useful. So just to go into the differences, at a small company, like you'd likely get to have more impact on the projects you are working on. But then it also means you would be doing lots of things without if you don't have like a senior machine learning engineer, you'd not get lots of mentorship from that person.
Exactly.
And you could possibly get things done, but then you may be doing lots of things the wrong way.
Exactly.
So there's that bit. On the positive side, you get involved in lots of things as well, because now you are going to be working on different projects. You're going to be working on different features. But at the bigger company, you'd have access to a lot more talent. Now you can get to interact with lots of other brilliant people and then get to work on your task. But at the same time, it also means you get to work on very specific things, which can be good, which can be bad. But for me, I really do not have any preference, mainly because I've kind of kept my personal learning schedule constant, and I've taken that outside of work. So regardless of how the work environment is, I know I'm still growing at the side. So if I'm getting to work on a very specific project at work, I take advantage of that and learn as much as I can. If it's a broad project, I take advantage of that and learn as much as I can. So I really can't say one is better than the other. It basically just depends on who it is in that situation, and then the culture around. If you don't have lots of people who encourage you to learn or try out stuff in your team, then I think it's going to be quite hard for someone starting out to do anything useful at that point.
Yeah. And you spoke about growth, and you still have a lot of time to grow in your career. And that thought came back to the same question you spoke about research and what you disagree with the industry in terms of research being valuable. So in the next future, we should be looking at it, Dr. Habeeb. What's the next phase in your career that you interested to go into academia to further let me say, your research skills, and also to prepare yourself also maybe to go into research but in the industry, or you'll stay more at this stage just focus on product, or at one point in time you may decide to do that?
So for me, I do not intend to go into academia, but then I intend to stay on the edge. When I mean stay on the edge, I intend to have lots of networks in academia. I intend to stay up to date with whatever it is that's coming out from the research work done in academia, because I think it's very important to stay updated with all of these changes, so you can bring in all of that work into the industry and see which ones can actually be put into products. Because lots of the ideas you find in academia, they may not be very useful today, but then in a couple of years it becomes very useful. And I think I personally just find joy in doing that, because now I'm getting to work on interesting things which may not be immediately useful, but it's interesting. It's valuable at some point. So I think that's it. My current role at Thomson Reuters is at the research lab, so I'm going to be having lots of exposure to those kind of things. It's likely it's in other companies they would call it like a research engineering role. So basically just hoping to stay at the edge of academia and then get to work on products and systems in the industry as well. So
sounds interesting. Anyway, we'll be following up with that, and hopefully in the next coming years and all that, we'll also get to read maybe some papers in which you cited since you're on the edge. And also talking about, let me say, that bridging that bridge between academia and and also the industry. Are there some events you attend or some key, let me say, I would say industry events, be it in academia or let me say industry that you do attend that sometimes these are places where actually, let me say, you're able to meet these brilliant minds, just like what we attended last time at Pi Data, but which was more focused, I'll say, for the industry. But are there other industry events between this, I would say, as you said, right, between academia and the industry that you attend or that you feel like are some key valuable places for you to tap into academia minds?
So in academia, there are lots of conferences, and then there are lots of there are things called special interest groups. So, for example, in the areas I'm interested in, which is information retrieval, there's a special interest group on information retrieval. So basically, this covers almost all of the fields that kind of fall in that field, and then neighboring fields as well. So one thing I did was to join a mailing list. So I really don't know how it works with other special interest groups, but the one for information retrieval has it like a mailing list, so they get to send various roles, opportunities, or conferences, or links to that type of thing to that mailing list, and I get to see and pick the ones that I find interesting. I attended the European Summer School on Information Retrieval this year, and I got to see it was going to hold based on that mailing list. So I think if you intend to stay in touch with academia in that way, then you could basically do the same thing. Find or meet people directly, ask questions how they get to stay in touch with others in the space. And for the industry, I think there are lots of conferences as well. So I think it's probably easier to even find those conferences because you can easily get them on Meetup or Eventbrite or platforms like that.
So thank you once more for doing this. I mean, we can't have you here for the whole day, and you've provided so much valuable insights and information that I feel like our users can dig on that. And obviously, we'll be sharing some of those links down the notes. But before we do, Pat, Habeeb, what are some of the key advices and insights, hacks, or tips you feel will be very valuable for those that are trying to get into machine learning, and some of the communities you feel will be valuable for them too on their part?
So I think staying interested is like the first thing. Working on things that kind of interest you, because it's a very broad field. The weird thing is, as you dive deep into a particular field, you find out that it's even broader than you thought, because there's always going to be something that is available to learn. Then I would also say try to keep like a T-shape. It's commonly said to keep a T-shape, meaning keeping a broad base, understanding certain things in various fields, and having a good understanding of how those things work, and then diving deep into one part. So like if you were to look at a T, you have the top part and then the longer part, then diving deep into one or two parts that you think would help you get better at machine learning or software engineering. Work on side projects, because it's through side projects you'd be able to practice some of the things you've learned, because depending on where you work, you may often not get the luxury of working on all the interesting things you want. So you could have like those situations as well. Get to read books. There are like different books I've read in recent time. There's one that I often always remember, which is Apprenticeship Patterns. It's a guidance for the aspiring software craftsman. I think it's a book by Adewale Oshine. So I think that book kind of goes into different bits of being an apprentice, and then keeping the fire alive and the drive to learn new things. So I often get to read that book every once in a while, because I think I'm very much still an apprentice, still learning new things. So I think those are like the main tips I would have. Work on projects, share your work, keep learning new things, network with others, join communities, help others as well. Like there are sometimes that you learn from the question someone else asks you, because now you really did not know it, but now you get to look it up and then learn. So I think those are just a couple of tips that I think have in mind.
Okay.
Nothing special, sadly, but then
Yeah.
I think everything is simple. The difficult part is getting it done. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Habeeb. It was really lovely having you on the show. And where can some of our users stay in touch with you in order to keep the fire burning, as you rightly said? Are you on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook?
Yes, I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter, Haksot, Haksoat.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn as well, Habeeb Shopeju. So I think those are like the two main platforms that it's easier to reach out on LinkedIn anyway. So I think I reply to messages faster on Twitter than LinkedIn because I barely open that. Yeah, so
okay. We'll be sharing that in the link below. And once more, Habeeb, thanks and have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you.